BAW 212 is an extremely popular Chinese replica of Land Rover Defender, even though they will deny that fact. It's an original vehicle based on Russian military technologies, Russian military Jeep vehicle. We watched the disassembly of this vehicle, which was of great interest to you. Please watch it if you haven't already. But today we are looking at a real freaking off-road. You've never seen anything like it unless you watched a year or 2 years ago. I translated another insane off-road that Russians did on a Chinese Great Wall Motor Tank 300. That was also full on. Trust me, this is a video of a similar nature. I am translating it for you. I am showcasing here original content with all respect to the original creators. Links to the original content are always in the description below. The original video was recorded by BAW Russia. So it actually is not it's a commercial institution, but it is the brand. So in this particular case, I'm not affiliated with them in any way, but I'm just admiring just the amount of punishment they put onto this vehicle and how well this vehicle, well, many of them have performed in this crazy off-road. So for context, and they will say it again and I will repeat myself as I translate it, but the crazy thing is that they went through Russian forests and swamps for 3 days with no connection to the outside world. They had very limited number of support vehicles with them, and you will see it all on the screen. It's freaking crazy, okay? Before we proceed, please do understand that somebody needs to pay for my coffee. All these videos take effort to create, and I'm very grateful to our friends Glovebox for sponsoring this video. Listen, not all of us are buying brand new vehicles or vehicles from a dealership. We are buying used vehicles, and the market is saturated with them in 2026. Some say that depreciation happens during the first year of ownership. Some of you even say that it makes no sense buying a brand new vehicle. It's much better to buy a 1-2-year-old vehicle. Well, still, that vehicle needs to be serviced. It needs to be serviced regularly, and it may have underlying conditions that may have not been addressed properly. This is where our sponsor Glovebox, that brings this video to you, comes into play. They can properly comb through the service history of the vehicle, put together a proof of service report for you to ensure that all your timing belts, all your cooling systems, all your other kind of things have been properly looked after. Obviously, the older the vehicle you're buying is, the more valuable this report becomes. But even for brand new vehicles, 1-2 years old, they're still very, very important. You have seen a lot of my videos where I have struggled with some of the elements of our MG ZST, for example, where the whole braking system had to be replaced after the first year of ownership. What if I was a dishonest owner and tried to resell this vehicle without addressing this issue? Things like, so service like Glovebox will address things like these. I think it's a great opportunity for you to make sure that before you actually sign that contract and transfer that ownership of the used vehicle to yourself, you engage with a service such as Glovebox. Thank you, Glovebox, for sponsoring this video. Please check out the link in the description below. So let's start by introducing the vehicles today. They have obviously 3 BAW 212s. 2 of them are almost stock versions and 1 with some extensive off-road tuning. Black BAW is diesel engine and 2 others are turbo petrol engines, but all of them have the same transmission by ZF, automatic transmission. White one has stock suspension as well, but 2 others have off-roading tuned suspension a little bit. We also are hearing here about the preparation for the trip, where the narrator says that they've put 32-inch tires on all 3 of these vehicles to make it remotely possible, and it's even quite visible from the back on this white one that's driving in the front right now. Those tires make the interior apparently quite noisy when you are on the sealed asphalt road, for example, but the drive itself isn't uncomfortable. Extra vibration is minimal, but yeah, it's a little bit noisy. Julian here on screen is one of the directors of BAW Russia, comments on how he is progressively speeding up, reaching all the way to 140 kilometers an hour. I presume it's legal on Russian highways. I haven't been there in decades, so I can't confirm or deny this. He is saying that acceleration is very easy to achieve and quite enjoyable. After a while, they say that they got into a massive roadblock on a highway, so they had to just take a detour before they even reached the destination, and they decided to cut through the forest. But obviously they didn't win any time by this. It was just like the first mud kind of adventure. They added about an hour to the overall trip time. Eventually they got to their destination, registered for the off-road, got all these tags and stuff. Looks like it's very organized over there, rather than, as we might imagine, as pure wilderness. You go to a forest and do what you want. This is not like it. So this adventure is called Full Chukhloma 2025. Off-road location of a village, presumably the village area, Chukhloma. It attracts all sorts of adventurers, differently modded Land Cruisers. You can see here some other models of the cars, very, very heavily modified vehicles. Some of those, you even look at them and you couldn't tell what they were in their original shape and form, because there are massive amount of sort of mods on them already. So definitely massive number of real fans of off-roading adventurers are gathering there to brace this full Chukhloma area. And pressure was obviously on for BAW, because this track isn't about winning, but about looking still quite respectable when you're right next to the proven car makes and configurations, giving, you know, a good impression, I suppose, and driving something that's really unseen before. It attracts a lot of attention. So they started their first day of off-road and got into the first mud pit filled with water. Diesel engine BAW had clearly a lot more power pushing through, while petrol ones struggled a tiny bit, but still got through fine as soon as you got the revs up. Here they cut to showing the off-road map, where the tracks are marked in different colors. Green ones are the easiest and red ones are obviously the hardest. He asks this lady for advice, and she says, well, look, yellow ones are hard enough, red ones are crazy hard, and the red dotted lines here are real hardcore, and she used a much stronger word in the original footage. Good on her. So a bit more about this Chukhloma setup. In short, you're given a map of a very large area where you can follow any of the tracks that are marked there. There are lots of directions and choices that one could make, and lots of different teams kind of going through it. At one point they even lost, they got lost on the way to the first landmark. They tried to reach some local church, so they had to just cut off the beaten path and followed one of those red dotted lines on the map. That was their first experience. To give you further context, the mud that you're seeing is apparently actually clay, which means that even on 32-inch tires you still get stuck, and the tire gets a new smooth surface, offering virtually no grip whatsoever. But losing grip is only half the trouble. The second half is that these very heavy vehicles, they also sink into this clay mud, and the feeling is as if something sticky is attaching itself to the body of the vehicle and the frame, and is holding the whole thing in place. It's not just purely gravity. So basically these parts of the map are literally impassable without a support vehicle, a rope and a pulley, for sure. Shocking, to be honest, unless you love hardcore and off-road quite heavily yourself and you're used to it, I suppose. Some other off-road party followed the same track, he says, and then he says, what did this Nissan even expect to experience here, really? Like, how was it expecting to pass through this? At another point they had to cross a river. I'm cutting kind of here a little bit ahead to the more interesting parts. First, kind of contemplating how they were going to get off one bank into the crossing, into the water, but they didn't know that getting out of that crossing to the opposite bank would be even more problematic. So basically climbing onto the other bank using car's own abilities and car's own power is just impossible. So first you need to obviously find the right spot where the bank is okay to even climb, and you would then absolutely need to have an electrically powered pulley with you. Don't forget that while the car is sitting there in the riverbed waiting to be pulled out, the water is seeping into the cabin, so they were all wet there. During all this, let's call it fun, I suppose, they had to take off one of the wheels because something felt wrong, to see what happened, and they found out that the alloy center bit of the wheel has cracked actually under pressure. Must have been one of the stones or something like that was caught between the wheel support and the disc itself. And there was obviously no way of fixing it. They only had to go through this crazy effort to replace the whole wheel. And they had, why crazy effort? Because, well, conditions are obviously horrendous, but they also had only one shovel, one spade. And they used it as extra surface under the jack, so that the jack doesn't sink into the muddy ground when lifting the vehicle. So they were left without anything proper to dig. And they had only one spade, if you can believe that, between 3 vehicles. And they are like sort of, you know, face palming themselves and like swearing under their breath, saying, look, we are just idiots. Like, how could we do that? That's such a dumb mistake, but they did it. So yeah, it was a massive exercise by the looks of it to even put that massive tire back on. Yeah, and they said at the very least the note to self is take 2 spades for the next adventure. As it got dark the first day of their adventuring there, they had to turn around and return to camp. As you can see very clearly, this is not the type of leisurely forest ride that one can, you know, comfortably go through and, you know, not worry being stuck irrecoverably. Yeah, so they had to return and follow the protocol for safety, putting all of these 3 badges, tags back onto the records board to indicate that all 3 vehicles returned to base and no emergency rescue was needed. Second day, they started in the great mood, obviously. We have clearly shown some other off-roading enthusiasts and their various vehicles participating in this adventure. More water crossings, being stuck in the mud, using pulleys, following their red lines on the map. Of course, they felt like they had to go for the hardest paths, not something yellow or green. The first criticism of BAW 212's capability that I heard at this point was where the commentators said that the car is too smart for its own good. It is when the electronic brain of the vehicle automatically decides to disable diff locks at different parts of the track. So the technical capability, the muscle is there, but BAW often overthinks things, making it much harder than they need to be for itself. Same as we do as people, I suppose. This guy on screen right now is actually a Russian and international off-roading champion called Sergey, and he says confidently that for this kind of price that this vehicle is available right now in Russia, there is simply no alternative with the same capability for real off-roaders and modders. And for those who don't want such insane hardcore, even stock version of BAW 212 with a pulley installed and 32-inch tires would do perfectly fine. They wouldn't need to do anything else, according to him anyway. I mean, yeah, let's not forget that this is obviously organized by BAW Russia, so they are directly interested and invested into showing their product as well as they can and say nice things about it. But as they say, footage doesn't lie. Proof is in front of us, right? One thing is somebody tells us tales. Another thing is we see these vehicles surviving this insane punishment and crossing most insane terrain better than a lot of their other, they're not contestants there, but they're other veterans present on this track, as we can see. Unsurprisingly, their white BAW was the smoothest one on-road as the drive, but had the most trouble off-road and in the muddy, watery holes. The driver says, yeah, sure, it was a bit crazy at times, but I got through a lot of it by myself, you know, and no one even got car sick. I think he's not promoting the car here, but he's just joking. On these roads, even the highly tuned BAW, the best tuned one, the one that Sergey, the champion, was driving, got stuck, and not once. And the commentator tells us that the conditions were absolutely brutal. He says ice-cold, muddy water, and you have to put your arm under that water to find the towing hook. So he says my whole arm at one point got numb. I couldn't feel it at all. He says the rest of the trip followed a very predictable kind of pattern. First, their most experienced driver, Sergey, flies through on the blue BAW, typically not getting stuck, and then the white one gets stuck, for sure. And then they have to all stop and pull out the stuck vehicle, which sometimes was white one, sometimes was the other one. The only difference and the main thrill is in choosing the right trajectory as you decide to cross another obstacle. You made a mistake, you stuck. You didn't, you get through. And this is apparently the main pleasure of this off-road, according to him, if one could ever explain it without putting someone behind the wheel. Finally, they were through the forest at one point, and further the map suggested that they'll have a massive field ahead of them, which basically meant it was a swamp, really, waiting for them to be stuck in forever, probably. This is where they decided to call it very smartly, and they decided that there were no trees to hook the pulleys onto if they needed to pull themselves out, and there was at least a meter deep water ahead of them, so basically too dangerous, not worth it. So they retreated back to the forest and chose a different path that was evidently a lot easier for this BAW to traverse. They reached at one point, I thought it was interesting, a broken bridge that they couldn't go around as the water in the river was 2 meters deep. They would have never gotten out of it. So they had to use these logs and create this crossing manually. Luckily, there were a couple of old rails left there to support the vehicle weight, but they still had to put more on to give them, the confidence that this is even a doable crossing. Well, the main thing is that everyone crossed without any accidents here, thank God, and not drowning in the river. They also show here, cut a couple of times too, some minor damage that was incurred during these several days of this crazy off-road, such as that cracked wheel that we saw, and minor cracks such as broken plastic bumpers, because not bumping into trees and some other stumps as you get pulled out of the mud is basically virtually impossible. So some damage had to be done. And while all of this is unfortunate and unpleasant, of course, on new vehicle, these real off-roaders know that this is easily replaceable and kinda unavoidable. So overall, they say in the original, to wrap up the original translation, BAW 212 did extremely well, very, very good. Again, you can take it with a grain of salt if you want to, because this is BAW promoting their vehicles, but the proof is in the pudding, aka on the screen. They've shown us what it's capable of. There is no theory in this test, only practice. And this is it, my friends. Isn't it crazy? Crazy both in terms of how honest the brand is by putting their vehicle to a real test. They're not trying to be cute about it. They're not trying to be like, oh yeah, take them to the forest, but just make sure you don't drive too fast. They're like killing these vehicles, which was crazy to see, super entertaining for me, hopefully entertaining for you. If you're still watching this video, you're one of my most cherished subscribers, because it's important to me motivationally to see your comments, to see your likes, and for YouTube algorithm to see that the channel is alive and I have people who are interested in my content, especially in the overwhelming onslaught of AI generated content, which has its own place, but not necessarily on this particular channel. So thank you very much for being with me today. Please visit our sponsors if you haven't already. Talk to me in the comments below, and stay tuned as always. Videos are coming to you when I'm on holidays every couple of weeks, otherwise every week. So if you're not subscribed yet, you're most welcome here. See you later. Goodbye for now.